Good morning. I'm Divine Grace Gomez, base criminology third year. So for today, I'll be sharing to you my learnings from the different groups with different topics of the subjects CLJ3 Criminal Law Book 1. So the first group reported under the Article 6 of the RPC, which are consummated, frustrated, and attempted felonies. So consummated felonies as well as those which are frustrated and attempted are punishable. So a felony is consummated when all the elements necessary for its execution and accomplishment are present. So there is an attempt when the offender commences the commission of a felony directly by overt acts or does not perform all the acts of execution which should produce the felony by reason of some cause or accident other than his own spontaneous desistance. So, example for attempted is naigipusil si Juan, which is si Pedro. Pero wala naigo si Pedro. Nadaplisan ra ang abaga ni Pedro. So, ang kaso ni Juan is attempted felony. So, the group 2 reported about the frustrated felony. Frustrated felony is when the offender has performed all the acts of execution to produce the felony as a consequence, but the crime does not result due to some independent of the will of the offender. So, for example of the felony is when si Juan gipisil niya si Pedro aiming to his heart. Pero, naigo si Pedro sa abaga due to the movement of Pedro. So, Pedro is mortally wounded but alive. So, in Juan's case, it will be frustrated felony. So, the next group reported about the Article 11 of Justifying Circumstances. So, under this article are self-defense, which anyone who acts the defense of his person or rights. So, there are two kinds of aggression. The first one is lawful aggression. So, lawful aggression is an assault or at least a threatened assault of an immediate and imminent kind. And the second one is unlawful aggression, which is an actual physical assault upon a person or at least a threat to inflict real injury. So the next one is defense of relatives. So defense of relatives is anyone who acts in defense of the person or rights of his spouse, ascendants, descendants, or legitimate natural or adopted brothers or sisters, or of his relatives by affinity in the same degrees, and those by consanguinity within the fourth civil degree. So the next would be defense of stranger. Any person included in the enumeration of relatives stated in the defense of relative. So the next is state of necessity. So state of necessity is any person who, in order to avoid an evil or injury, does an act which causes damage to another, or provided that the following requisites are present. And the next one is fulfillment of duty. So, fulfillment of duty is any person who acts in the fulfillment of a duty or the lawful exercise of a right or office. The next one is obedience to a law. In order to any person who acts in obedience to an order issued by a superior for some lawful purposes. The next group reported about the Article 12 of exempting circumstances. So, those are defenses where the accused committed a crime but is not criminally liable. So, So, imbecility exists when a person or advanced age has the mental development comparable to that of a child between 2 and 7 years of age. The next one is insanity, which exists when there is complete deprivation of intelligence. So, mere abnormality of the mental faculties will not exclude imputability. So, next is responsibility refers to the obligation or suffering of consequences of crime. So, intervention program for a child at risk refers to a child who is vulnerable and at the risk of committing criminal offenses. So, next is diversion program for a child in conflict with the law, which refers to a child who is alleged as or accused of or adjudged having committed an offense under the Philippine law. So, exempt from the criminal liability, any person over 15 and under 18 years old, unless he acted with discernment in Article uh, revised or the Republic Act 9344. So, discernment is a mental capacity of to understand the difference between right and wrong is known as the discernment. So, any person, while performing a lawful act with due care, causes an injury by mere accident without fault or intention of causing it. Next is another person who acts under the compulsion of irresistible force, and any person under the impulse of an uncontrollable fear of an equal or greater injury. Any person who fails to perform an act required by the law when prevented by some lawful or insuperable cause. So, the Group 6 reported Article 14 of aggravating circumstances. So, those which, if attendant in the commission of the crime, serve to increase the penalty without, however, exceeding the maximum of penalty provided by law for those offense. So, there are four kinds of aggravating circumstances, which is generic, specific, qualifying, and inherent. So, generic is generally applied to almost all crimes. So, while specific apply only to particular crimes. So, they do not change the character of offense charged but guide the court in imposing the proper penalty. So, next is qualifying. So, qualifying change the change the nature of the crime. So, while the inherent is necessity accompany the commission of the crime. So, it must be a necessity accompany the commission of the crime.